The first time I saw the lake that evening, it looked like it was swallowing the last of the sun. The ridges above it were already purple, the air turning sharp with that cold bite that always comes just before dark in the mountains. I was hiking with my friend Doug, both of us bone-tired and a little behind schedule. We'd been pushing all day toward a single marked campsite we knew about. A flat patch near the water, ringed by boulders and protected from wind. The ranger had said it was the only safe place to camp for 5 miles in any direction. I remember thinking how good it would feel to set down my pack, get the fire going, and let the warmth crawl back into my fingers. But as we rounded the final bend and saw the site, there were already figures moving there, 3 of them, heads bent over a pile of gear, smoke from a half-built fire curling up into the blue dusk. For a long moment, neither group said anything. We just stood there panting, boots crunching the last few feet of gravel. Doug muttered something under his breath I couldn't make out, and I caught myself counting the seconds of light left, maybe 20 minutes, maybe less before full dark. The other group noticed us, finally, a woman with a red bandana, a younger guy who looked college-aged, and an older man with a limp. They looked as tired as we felt. The woman gave a short wave that wasn't exactly friendly, but not hostile either, just acknowledgement. Doug dropped his pack beside me with a heavy thud. "Looks like we had the same idea," I said, trying to keep my tone light. My voice felt strange in the quiet. The woman nodded. "You headed for this site too?" "Yeah. Ranger said it was the only one in this stretch." The older man sighed, rubbing his knee. "Same for us. We've been on the trail since dawn. Didn't think we'd make it this far, honestly." Doug's eyes flicked to me, then to the fire ring. There was only room for maybe 2 small tents on the flattest part of the ground. Beyond that, it sloped down toward the lake, or up into uneven rocks. The idea of hiking further, through gathering dark, over slick roots and loose shale, felt reckless, but the tension hung there anyway, as though someone needed to claim it first. Plant a flag. "Who got here first?" Doug asked finally. The younger guy spoke up. "We did. Maybe 10 minutes ago. We're just getting set up now." There wasn't anything rude in his voice, just weariness. Still, Doug frowned, glancing at the sun's last reflection on the water, like maybe it could give us another option. But there wasn't one. I could already feel the temperature dropping. The air smelled of cold pine and lake water, and the faint sweetness of wood smoke starting to catch. The woman must have seen the look on my face, because she said, "There's room enough if we squeeze in. We don't mind sharing, long as nobody minds close quarters." Doug hesitated, but I nodded. "That's fair. We're all beat. Let's make it work." The agreement came with a strange mix of relief and awkwardness, like shaking hands after a near accident. We all moved quickly then, racing the shadows, 2 groups of strangers forced into uneasy cooperation by the dark, pressing in from the trees. By the time we'd dropped our packs, the last band of daylight was gone. The forest had gone still, except for the rhythmic lap of the lake and the first cautious chirps of night insects. I dug out my headlamp, but the beam felt small and thin compared to the dark around us. The woman, her name was Carrie, I'd learn later, was kneeling by the fire ring, coaxing the flame higher with the patience of someone who'd done this 1,000 times, and the older man, who introduced himself as Vince, sat on a flat rock rubbing his knee, while the younger guy, Eli, gathered stray sticks with the quiet energy of someone eager to prove useful. Doug and I set our tent on the far side of the clearing, giving them space, but the ground was so tight that one corner of our rainfly brushed their gear pile. "Hope you don't mind the crowding," I said as I hammered in a stake. Carrie looked up from the fire, her face flickering in the orange light. "Long as nobody snores too loud." That earned a faint laugh from everyone, though the tension still hummed underneath. We were all strangers pretending to be relaxed, each of us aware of how little wilderness etiquette covered this kind of situation. There wasn't a rule for 2 parties arriving at the same scarce patch of level earth just before nightfall. The unspoken code said, "First come, first serve," but it also said not to send anyone off into the dark when it might not be safe. The line between fairness and survival was thin out here. Once the fire caught properly, the clearing softened. Shadows danced along the rocks, and the lake reflected the first stars. The smell of wood smoke wrapped around us like a blanket. Doug heated some soup on our little stove, while Carrie's group roasted sausages on sticks. We didn't share food, not at first, but the aromas mingled anyway, making the place feel smaller, almost like one big camp instead of two. Eli spoke first. We came from the North Ridge. Thought we'd never get down that last section. It's steep. Yeah, Doug said. We came up from the creek crossing. Took longer than we planned. Trail markers were half gone. Forest Service hasn't maintained that spur in a while, Vince said. We got turned around twice. It was strange how quickly exhaustion stripped away formality. Within half an hour, we'd gone from wary silence to swapping complaints about blisters and trail confusion. But even as conversation found its rhythm, there was still a delicate balance. Every time someone shifted or stretched, you could feel the mental boundaries, the quiet math of who had more space, whose gear was spreading too far. When the last bit of soup was gone, I leaned back on my elbows and looked up. The sky was wide open, crisp with stars. Somewhere out beyond the trees, a loon called, its voice echoing across the lake like a ghost. For a few moments, none of us spoke. We just watched the fire breathe, crackle, and rise. A temporary peace between two groups who hadn't meant to share the same patch of wilderness, but had no choice except to trust the night together. Later, when the fire had burned down to coals, that uneasy truce began to shift again. The wind picked up from the lake, sending cool air through the trees and making the tent walls ripple like slow waves. Doug and I were sitting close to the heat, our knees pulled up, when Vince stirred and said, "You two must have made good time coming from the creek. That's a long climb." Doug nodded. We pushed pretty hard after lunch, figured we'd better get here before dark. Carrie, across from him, gave a small smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. So did we. Something in the tone made the air thicken again. Everyone knew what she meant, that both groups had thought the same thing, raced the same sun, and believed they'd earned this patch of ground. I poked at the fire with a stick, trying to give the moment somewhere else to go. Sparks rose and vanished into the black canopy. Doug said, "You folks plan to head out early? We were thinking sunrise, maybe catch the ridge light." "Same plan," Eli said. "Trail's easier before the heat sets in." "So," Doug replied, half joking, "who gets the prime spot for packing in the morning? There's barely room to turn around out here." Carrie laughed softly, but Vince's voice came low and rough. "You take whatever space you need. I'm just hoping my knee lets me walk out." That quieted everyone. I hadn't realised how much pain he was in until then. The climb we'd all just finished would have been brutal with an injury. Carrie noticed my glance and said, "He twisted it 2 days ago coming down a washout. We were planning to rest tonight, but..." She gestured around at the crowded site, the uncertain arrangement of tents. Plans changed. For a while we listened to the wind in the pines and the soft hiss of the fire dying. It was clear now who had the greater need, not by rule or right, but by simple human measure. Doug caught my eye and gave the smallest nod. He got up, grabbed our tent bag and said quietly, "We'll move ours up by the rocks. Bit slanted, but it'll do." Carrie started to protest, but I waved it off. "You've got less packing to do in the morning. Easier on that knee." It wasn't heroics, just fairness as we saw it. Still, it felt like something loosened in the air, as if both sides had been waiting for one act of goodwill to break the gridlock. Together we shifted a few stones, levelled out a rough corner above the slope, and soon our tent sat half crooked but solid. By the time we crawled inside, the lake was a mirror of stars, and the others had gone quiet. From our spot, I could see the faint glow of their fire through the nylon, the silhouettes of their shadows moving softly. The sound of the wind and water mingled into one steady rhythm. I remember thinking, just before sleep took me, how strange it was that survival depended less on who arrived first than on who was willing to bend. Out here, fairness had nothing to do with rules, it had everything to do with grace. I woke in the middle of the night to the sound of wind pushing through the trees like the slow breathing of something alive. The tent fabric flexed and whispered, and the smell of the lake drifted cold and metallic. Doug was asleep, his steady breathing lost in the rustle outside. For a while I just lay there, watching the moonlight flicker through the nylon, thinking how odd it was that we were sharing this little hollow of wilderness with complete strangers, all of us tethered by the same patch of dirt and the same need to stay warm until morning. Sometime before dawn, I heard movement, soft footsteps on pine needles. I unzipped the tent quietly and peered out. Carrie was up, adding a few small branches to the coals, her face lit by the faint orange glow. She nodded when she saw me. "Couldn't sleep," she said. "Wind keeps me up." I joined her by the fire, wrapping my jacket tighter. "You do this often?" I asked. She smiled, eyes fixed on the coals. "Used to. Not so much now. Life got busy. Vince is my uncle. He wanted one last long trip before his knee gives out for good. I guess we're both trying to make the miles mean something." Her words carried a quiet weight. We watched sparks spiral upward, disappearing into the dark, the smell of smoke mixed with the damp scent of the forest floor, rich and earthy. For a moment, the tension of earlier seemed far away, replaced by that peculiar intimacy strangers find only in the wild, where there's no small talk left, just truth spoken low under the stars. When the horizon began to lighten, Doug stumbled out, rubbing his eyes, and Eli followed soon after. Without needing to discuss it, all of us began moving in rhythm, boiling water, rolling sleeping pads, shaking dew from the tents. It was a choreography of tired campers, practiced and silent. Every now and then our eyes met, and we shared brief nods of understanding. No apologies were needed. The night had settled whatever unease had been between us. As we packed, Vince limped down to the water's edge, crouching carefully to fill his bottle. The lake was glassy, silver under the dawn. I watched his reflection ripple with each movement, the mountains behind him blushing with first light. Carrie stood beside me, arms folded. "Thanks," she said simply. "For what?" "For letting us stay. I know it wasn't ideal." I shrugged. "Nobody owns the wilderness. We just borrow a piece of it for a night." She smiled, a little wistfully. "Still, you could have made it harder." The wind shifted again, stirring the treetops. Somewhere, a raven called. Morning had come, and the camp that had felt divided 12 hours before now felt like a single shared heartbeat, ready to move apart again, but connected for good by one strange necessary night. By the time the sun climbed above the ridgeline, our makeshift camp was almost gone. Just a blackened ring of stones, a few boot prints, and a faint circle in the grass where our tents had been. The lake shimmered silver blue, still enough to reflect the entire sky. Steam rose from its surface as the chill of night gave way to the first warmth of day. Vince was already shouldering his pack, grimacing slightly but refusing any help. Carrie double-checked their map, while Eli stood on a rock scanning the trail ahead. Doug and I were nearly ready ourselves, the last of our gear strapped down tight. There was an odd quiet between us all, the kind that follows a shared ordeal, not unpleasant, just full of unspoken gratitude and the gentle awkwardness that comes when people realise they've known each other only for a single night, yet somehow managed to depend on one another. Carrie approached while Doug cinched the final strap on his pack. "We'll take the ridge trail," she said. "Vince can manage the incline better than the creek rocks." "Good choice," I said. "We'll go the other way, back toward the crossing. Easier on the knees going down." We stood there a while longer, neither side quite ready to leave. The wind carried the scent of pine sap and cold stone. A jay called sharply from somewhere above, a sound so alive it felt like the forest was reminding us that it didn't much care about our plans or our timing. Eli broke the silence first. "Guess we'll see you down the trail somewhere." "Maybe," I said. "Take care of that knee." Vince chuckled. "I'll try, though it's older than I am." We all laughed softly, and the sound echoed faintly across the water. Then, as naturally as it had all begun, we parted. Two groups that had arrived in conflict and left in quiet companionship. Doug and I took the lower trail, our boots thudding gently against the damp earth. After a few minutes, I glanced back. The others were already small figures against the trees, their outlines fading into the shimmer of morning light. We hiked in silence for a long time, the forest around us bright and newly awake. When the trail curved high enough to see the lake, one last time, I stopped. From up there it looked peaceful, untouched. No sign of the strange little human drama that had unfolded on its shore. Doug followed my gaze. "Funny thing," he said. "Last night felt tense as a storm, but now it's like it never happened." "Yeah," I said. "That's the way of the woods. It swallows things quick. Arguments, footprints, everything." As we started walking again, I thought about that firelight glow, the sound of quiet voices, sharing warmth, and how survival sometimes depended not on who claimed the ground first, but on who was willing to share it. Out here, fairness wasn't written on paper. It lived in moments like that one, fleeting but real, when strangers became neighbours under a single patch of starlit sky.